afternoon. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of Vallecitos Water District for Wednesday, May 6, 2020. Before we start, I'd like to read the notice to the public since we're under a new way of doing things. Due to the evolving situation with the COVID-19 novel coronavirus and Executive Order N3520, so long as state or local public health officials have imposed or recommended social distancing measures, Vallecitos Water District will hold future meetings via teleconferencing and allow members of the public to observe and address the meeting telephonically or otherwise electronically. During this period of time, Vallecitos Water District will not be making any physical location available for members of the public to observe the meeting and offer public comment. The public is encouraged to watch and participate in the meeting from the safety of their homes. The meeting can be viewed on the agenda page located on the main page of the district's website. Public comments or questions can be submitted to the following email address, publiccomment@vwd.org. All written comments that are received at least 90 minutes before the meeting will be provided to the board, and a record of the receipt of comment will be noted during the meeting. Members of the public viewing the meeting via the Zoom video conferencing platform can express their desire to provide input at the appropriate time by utilizing the raise hand function. Additional instructions for online participation will be posted on the district's website, www.vwd.org/meetings. And if any of you are out there, welcome for joining us. Call to order, and because of the situation teleconferencing, we're going to defer on the pledge at this time, and we'll get back to that when we're all in the same place in person, which will be soon, I hope. Roll call will be by me today, and that is Director Martin. Are you here?
Present.
Director Elithart.
Present.
Director Sinella.
Present.
Director Hernandez.
Present.
Director Evans is here as well. All right. It's nice to have everyone with us today. Now, I would like, if possible, a motion to adopt the agenda for today's meeting.
Move to approve.
Who was that?
Jim Hernandez, Director Hernandez.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry.
And who seconded?
Sinella seconds.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. It's been moved and seconded that we accept the agenda for the regular meeting of May 6th. And you can answer by roll call. Director Elithart.
Yes.
Director Sinella.
Yes.
Director Hernandez.
Yes.
Director Martin. Are you unmuted? And Director Evans, yes. I'm not sure what happened to Director Martin there. Okay. So now we'll go to public comment. Persons wishing to address a matter not on the agenda may be heard at this time. However, no action will be taken until the matter is placed on a future agenda in accordance with board policy. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes. A request to speak form is required to be submitted to the executive secretary prior to the start of the meeting, if possible. Alternatively, persons wishing to address the board at this time may utilize the raise hand feature of the Zoom video conferencing platform. Public comment should start by stating name, address, and topic, and the board is not permitted during this time to enter into a dialogue with the speaker. Do we have any public comments or questions?
I do have one member of the public, Mr. Hunsaker, has his hand raised.
All
So
right.
if you'd like President Evans, I can permit him to talk at this time.
That would be great. I don't have any evidence of his hand on my screen, so I'd appreciate it if you take care of that.
Okay. So I clicked Mr. Hunsaker. You have 3 minutes now.
Okay, I have worked with Jonathan Todd And I believe we've got most of the issues resolved. And thank you, Mr. Priam, for your assistance as well. I'm speaking as a private citizen. My address 115 Equestrian Court, San Marcos. And I have made a couple of requests through email for copies, soft copies preferably, of the reimbursement contracts that the district has signed. And I'm wondering when I would be able to get those. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hunsaker. Do you have an answer for that, GM Pruitt?
I don't. I can look back at Mr. Hunsaker's emails. I vaguely recall him submitting the request. I'll get in touch with Mr. Hunsaker, clarify his request, and we'll get the information to him.
Thank you very much. All right, moving on to a presentation today by Chris Robbins, our Public Informant and Conservation Supervisor.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, board members. So this is one of our work we do videos. This one specifically relates to our hazardous materials response team. And the one thing I'd like to call your attention to is that the hazardous materials response team is multi-departmental. So you're going to see staff from various departments, construction, collection, Meadowlark, several different departments. And Glenn, if you can go ahead and roll it, that'd be terrific.
Hi, my name is Trisha Wolfslayer, and I'm the Risk Management Supervisor here at Vallecitos Water District. Here at Vallecitos Water District, protecting the environment is a priority. In order to protect our staff, the public, and the environment from any accidental chemical releases, we have an internal hazardous materials response team, or HAZMAT team. Our hazardous materials team is a highly trained unit of experts, and we have about 20 team members from different departments. We also handle common chemicals that are used for odor control and disinfection. We also handle fuel for our vehicles, generators, pumps, and motors. An employee that's a HAZMAT team member completes hazardous waste operations and emergency response training, or HAZWOPER training, and they complete HAZWOPER training amongst other specialized training courses throughout the year. If a spill occurs, HAZMAT team members don personal protective equipment and clothing in order to make safe entries into a hazardous environment. The HAZMAT team is also responsible for operations and maintenance of the district's hazardous materials response trailer.
Hi, I'm Annette Longville, safety technician for Vallecitos Water District. This is our hazmat trailer. Part of being on the hazmat team is inspecting the trailer. We inspect it on a monthly basis, and we rotate departments between water ops, safety and risk, collections, and MRF.
My name is Matthew Weiss, Senior Plant Operator here at the Meadowlark Water Reclamation Facility. I'm a part of the Vallecitos Hazmat team. It's a great honor just knowing that we're here to protect people in the surrounding areas, to protect the environment, and to know that we're here to jump into action in case there's an issue. I wanted to be a part of the Hazmat team because I wanted to see the inner workings of emergency response and to know those procedures. We know what to do, we've trained, we've gone through scenarios, and just being able to act with that confidence, it's a great thing to be a part of that team.
Part of our required HAZWOPER training, we incorporate the incident command system into our mock responses. Knowing the incident command system also helps us, if there were a real incident, it helps us integrate more seamlessly with our local, state, and federal emergency response partners if there really were some sort of emergency or incident that was bigger than something that we would handle on our own. Incident command system is sort of ingrained into our HAZMAT team. That's just how we do everything.
This is our incident command position board, where the incident commander will come in and assign staff to help assist in managing the incident by just placing people in specific roles.
More common scenarios that we use when we're conducting our HAZMAT training and drills is if there were a release of chlorine gas, which we use to conduct our wastewater treatment activities. And we have specialized equipment and materials to lock down those cylinders so that we can stop the release. And we practice that on a regular basis so that we can ensure that if something bad did happen, we would be able to stop it before it impacted the public.
For the emergency exercise, each person takes their turn discussing how they felt the drill went so that the next time, whether it be an emergency drill, we're better prepared.
And all in all, the drill went great. Everybody fell into their roles immediately. Everybody just jumped in, hands-on, really did really well. The great thing is everybody was able to overcome, get past any hurdles that came at us, and really, really did a great job.
Another great reason for any water or wastewater district, but for sure, you know, here at Vallecitos Water District, to have the hazardous materials team internally. The biggest thing is how it allows us to respond quickly. That's number one. We want to be able to get there and stop whatever spill it is and protect the environment. The other reason is cost savings. So in the long term, if we didn't have this team, we would have to either pay a response contractor to be at our beck and call. If something happened, then they would come and take care of the spill. We spend money for training and equipment, but that's a small amount of money compared to what it would cost to have a response contractor on call all the time. We're really lucky here at Vallecitos Water District to have this hazardous materials team and hazardous materials trailer. Many water and wastewater districts don't have the luxury of having an internal team. Feel like we're really ready in case some emergency would happen. I also feel like that means that you have a lot of really good support from our management team for the work that we do in the field. And I think we're really lucky to have that trailer and the capability and support to be able to keep training.
A little glitchy.
Emergency. By definition, a sudden and unexpected event.
Still
I think Glenn's going to the next video.
okay, it's not shared though, is it?
No.
Okay, Chris, is there anything else you wanted to say about the video?
No, it's a little glitchy, but imagine, you know, Alicia is so competent in how smooth it looks in person.
Thank you for the video. I thought it wasn't as smooth as the others have been, but I thought it was very interesting. And I certainly would never want to be in one of those hazmat suits. So did I understand you that we have 22 people who are trained for hazmat? Is
That's
that correct?
accurate. Yeah.
And how many are out on an actual event normally?
It would depend on the specific situation.
If
So
you
you
want, I
can
can answer that, Chris.
Two
Yeah.
or three or
Yeah.
four?
Ed can address that.
Yeah, so we started our hazmat team back in 91, and I can say, since I've been on it since 91, that we've had very few actual incidents that have been of any severity. We've had some small leaks here and there. We've had some small spills to take care of. But as it said in the video, it's a lot less expensive for the district to have its own internal team and equipment than it is to bring in the fire department and their hazmat team. We have trained with them. In fact, we've helped train some of the fire department locally. But it's been a really good program. And hopefully, if we eventually get rid of the chlorine gas down at Meadowlark, we'll drop down to mostly a spill team. But you're correct about wearing those level A suits. It is horrible.
They look horrible. They look like they're doing the COVID medical teams, except they also kind of look like little M&Ms when they're running down the street. So you might want to do them at some of the street fairs.
It's 30 to 35 degrees hotter inside the suit than whatever the temperature is outside of it.
Well, I really appreciate that. Do any of you other gentlemen have a comment to make or a question to ask? No? Well, thank you very much. Chris, I also wanted to say it's fun to see the employees in the videos. It's fun to see them in the latest, all of the, what do we call it now? Between the Pipes. Good job. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the consent calendar. What am I going to say? I was going to ask for a motion for the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar will be voted upon one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or a member of the public requests that a particular item be removed from the consent calendar, in which case we will be considered separately under action items. So I don't know if we have any public that would like to speak towards any of these, or if there's any requests by the other directors.
President Evans,
I'm sorry, what?
this is General Manager Crum. I just want to let you know that it doesn't appear that any of the members of the public want to make a comment on the
Oh,
consent
thank
calendar.
you so much, Glenn. Okay, could I please have a motion to accept the consent calendar?
Sanella moves to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you, Director Snell. And a second, please.
Second, Director Ellisthorpe.
Thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded to accept the consent calendar, and we'll answer this with a roll call again. Director Sinella,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
I'm going to have to abstain.
Director Martin,
Yes.
Director Elithar,
Yes.
and Director Evans, yes as well. Thank you. That's 4 and approved and 1 abstention. So now we'll move on to action items. If I can find them. We have 3, it looks like, today. And do we have any requests from the public to speak on these items before I get started?
I don't see any members of the public raising their hand, expressing a desire to speak in any of the items at this time, but I'll check in as the items progress.
Thank you, appreciate that. Okay, so we'll start with item 2.1, the Pandemic Local Emergency Declaration Resolution.
Yeah, and I'll take that item. So the item in front of the board is a request to adopt a resolution to declare a local emergency regarding the COVID-19 pandemic response. On February 14th of this year, the County of San Diego proclaimed a local emergency regarding the COVID emergency. On March 4th, Governor Newsom declared a state of emergency to make additional resources available to local agencies. The governor also directed the Office of Emergency Services to provide assistance to local governments impacted by COVID-19. On March 18th, the President of the United States declared a national emergency to address COVID-19. And on March 22nd, the President approved Major Disaster Declaration DR 4482 for the COVID-19 pandemic. So the declaration of a local emergency will basically allow local jurisdictions and the state to provide mutual aid and to ensure the district has sufficient resources to address the emergency conditions related to COVID. Declaring a local emergency will assist the district with obtaining state and federal resources or reimbursement funds. It's not a requirement, but it certainly will help the process. Governor Newsom's declaration opens the doors to the local agencies, so we don't have to individually. But declaring a local emergency would send a pretty clear signal to the state and the feds that the district may need access to those resources. And equally importantly, declaring a local emergency protects local officials and employees from liability when exercising or performing discretionary functions while responding to COVID-related events. And since there is an imminent and proximate threat of introduction of COVID-19 in the district, we are recommending that the board declare a local emergency. I just want to clarify before the board takes an action that there's no problems we're anticipating. The water is safe. Our operations crews are reporting to work every day. The water and wastewater operations are going on without a problem. This is primarily to open doors for funding and to open doors for mutual aid with other agencies. So I don't want any member of the public to think that conditions have worsened, because they certainly haven't from the district's perspective. So with that, I'll turn it over to the board. And again, the recommended action is to adopt the resolution.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions, directors?
Move to adopt. Martin.
Thank you. We have I'll second that. So it's been moved and seconded to adopt the resolution for the pandemic local emergency declaration resolution, and I'll go with roll call vote. Director Sinella,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Director Martin,
Yes.
Director Elithar,
Yes.
Director Evans is a yes as well, so it passes unanimously. Thank you. Item 2.2, will that also be with you, GM Pruitt?
Yes, it will, President Evans. And I did notice that Mr. Hunsaker has raised his hand since the last time I looked. So I
Okay.
don't know if it's regarding 2.1 or 2.2, but if it's okay with you, I'll allow him to speak at this point in time.
That would be a good idea. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Hunsaker, you can now make your comment.
In a state of emergency, the Prop 13 protections on tax increases is suspended up to 15 days after the emergency is declared over. A number of cities are considering filling up budget shortfalls through property tax increases. Is there any such plans or intentions at this point? Thank you.
Would you like to answer that?
We have no intention at this point in time to change our property tax allocations. We are in the process of preparing our budget, but we haven't considered any changes in the amounts that we collect as a result of this declaration of local emergency.
Anyone else have a comment? All right. Moving on to 2.2. Thank you, Mr. Hunsaker.
Yeah, so I'll take 2.2. This is similar to item 2.1 in that it's an action that our board is taking to adopt a resolution that will open the doors to federal and state aid. In order to be eligible for cost reimbursement from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, and the state of California, the district has to submit a form, a Cal OES, Office of Emergency Services, Form 130. That form basically designates the agent for the agency who can make certain actions on behalf of the district. And for our district, submitting this form, we will designate the finance manager, our administrative services manager, and our risk management supervisor. So the action that's being requested of the board is to adopt the resolution naming those people to act on behalf of the district for federal and state reimbursement purposes. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Directors, do you have any questions?
Move to adopt. Martin.
Thank you. And a second?
Second, Hernandez.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the resolution for the response and cost recovery resolution for the pandemic. Roll call vote. Director Martin,
Yes.
Director Elithar,
Yes.
Director Sinella,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Director Evans is a yes as well, so unanimous on that one. And 2.3, the adoption.
President Evans, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I can't hear either.
We may have lost President Evans.
She is still on the panel.
Okay.
There
Can you
she
hear
is.
me now?
We can hear
Yes.
you now.
All right. Will you be doing this as well? Oh, you will be. Okay. Thank you, Glenn.
I will. Can you all see this title screen from the PowerPoint presentation?
Hernandez.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Okay, so the item in front of the board is to adopt the EWA Encina Wastewater Authority fiscal year 21 pension, operating, and capital improvement budgets. As the directors know, we're one of 6 member agencies of the Encina Wastewater Authority. There are regional wastewater, joint powers authority that treat and dispose of wastewater on behalf of its
There's
members.
a lot of echo right now. Do you hear it, Jonathan? Sorry.
There's a little bit. I think it's just an activity issue.
Okay, well, I'll do what I can to minimize that.
Okay.
Sounds better.
So I'll be walking the board through the 3 components of the EWA proposed budget. So the 3 parts being the pension, the operating budget, and the capital improvement budget. So just before I get into the specifics, just to go over the Encina Wastewater Authority budget schedule, leading up to March, EWA was working with the general managers of the member agencies. And on March 31st, we had our budget workshop, and I participated in that meeting. In the month of April, EWA had quite a few actions. They took both the operating and capital budgets and the pension to their Policy and Finance Committee meeting on April 14th, to the Capital Improvement Committee on April 15th, and they took it to the board on April 22nd. And the board makes a recommendation to the Joint Advisory Committee, and it's basically at the same meeting. In the Joint Advisory Committee, if they adopt it, they send it out to the member agencies to adopt the budget. So according to the EWA bylaws, all 6 member agencies have to unanimously approve the budget in order for it to become effective. And EWA sets aside the months of May and June for the boards and councils of the member agencies to take their actions. And tonight we're taking our action. So we're probably the first agency to take action. If our board approves it tonight, I will forward that approval to EWA so that they can agendize it for a meeting in July. And then in July, what they will do is they'll take what's called an appropriations resolution to their board. It'll go to the Policy and Finance Committee on July 14th and their EWA board on July 22nd. And that'll basically free up the money that's been approved by all the member agencies. So that's just kind of a brief overview of the schedule. So now we'll get into the specifics. So this is an overview of the entire EWA budget. The column on the very left side talks about their different programs they have. The top line, the Encina Water Pollution Control Facility, that's the main plant. That's where they treat and dispose of the wastewater that comes into the plant. The Source Control Program, that's a program they have that works with large industrial dischargers to make sure that inappropriate material isn't getting into the sewage in the first place. So they're trying to control it at its source, and that's why it's called the Source Control Program. It's a lot easier to keep it from getting into the wastewater than to try to remove it from the wastewater once it's in there. The next 5 programs they have, they're called remote facilities. There's 4 pump stations and 1 water recycling facility. EWA operates those facilities on behalf of some of the member agencies. And it's important to note that Vallecitos doesn't participate in any of those 5. So the only 2 programs that we're really participating in that affect Vallecitos are the EWPCF, the main facility, and the Source Control Program. The other 5 remote facilities are picked up by the agencies that benefit from those. So I'll go down to a greater level detail on this. But before I leave the slide, just to point out on the bottom line there, the fiscal year 21 proposed budget combined for EWA is a little over $46.5 million. So that's what they're looking for approval for. And it's important to keep in mind that we are not approving just Vallecitos' portion of the budget. We're approving the budget, the EWA budget, and they need all 6 parties to approve unanimously. But I will show you what Vallecitos' share as we progress in here. So that $46 million is about a $2.7 million increase from the year before, which is about a 6.3% increase. So first we'll go over the pension policy. So back in 2019, EWA adopted a pension policy that stated that they wanted to pay off their employees' PERS, unfunded accrued liability, over a 3-year period. And they broke that down into equal annual payments of, and you can see right in here, of about $4.1 million. So that's the accelerated payment for the unfunded accrued liability. They made that payment back in 2020. They are proposing to make an equal payment in 21, and then next year in fiscal year 22, they'll take a look at what remains, and then they'll make a decision whether they want to pay the remaining amount. So there's no difference on last year's EWA budget and this year's EWA budget in terms of the overall CalPERS unfunded accrued liability. There's also some additional PERS payments, the normal costs, not addressing the UAL. So the total payments that EWA plans to make in fiscal year 21 is just shy of $5 million for PERS payments. So the second program will be their operating program. And this is their operating budget, how they pay for the expenses, their non-capital expenses. And again, as I mentioned before, they have their main programs are the EWPCF, the source control program, the remote facilities, and they also have some internal service funds. They tend to be fairly minor, and we won't spend any time on that tonight. So this is the EWA proposed operating budget. Again, on the left column, it breaks down the programs. In the columns succeeding that are what they actually spent in fiscal year 2019, what their budget was in 2020, and what they're proposing in 2021. So a total operating expense for FY21 is a little over $19 million for EWA as a whole. That's an increase of about $1.4 million from the fiscal year 20 budget, which is a 7.8% increase. Just to point out, the top right corner, the EWPCF is by far their largest single cost, and the cost for that program are going up about 7.5%, just slightly over $1 million. So that's the cost. So keep that in mind. That number at the bottom, that $19.173 million, that's what EWA intends to spend. So the real question is, where do they get that money from? And the answer is they get it from their member agencies. So if you look in the bottom here, you'll see that, again, that same dollar amount, that $19.2 million that EWA is looking to collect, and they're collecting it from the member agencies. So the amount that they're looking for Vallecitos to participate in is about $3 million. So that's our share of that $19 million operating budget based on the demands that we place on the system, the joint system. That's about a $320,000 increase from the fiscal year 2020 budget, which is at about 11.7% increase. This is some of the justification. We asked EWA why our why we were the agency that was going up the most, and they shared this data with us. And it looks like the EWA flows, and they look backwards to help them project forwards. So they looked at the calendar year 2018 flows and the calendar year 2019 flows to make projections going forward. And when you compare 18 to 19, they showed our flows, the Vallecitos flows going into Encina, going up by about 20%. And our biochemical oxygen demand and our suspended solids, which are measures of the strength of the sewage, they also both went up by about 20%. So we're working with EWA to figure out why they think our numbers increased that much. A couple of reasons. We're the only one of the 6 member agencies that operates its own treatment plant. We have our Meadowlark plant. So depending on our recycled water demands in any given year, we may be sending more or less wastewater to Encina. And it's mostly related to how much recycled water we're producing. So if we're producing less recycled water, which we've seen a downward trend in the last couple of years, that means we're sending less to Meadowlark and more of our wastewater to Encina. So that would explain some of these increases, and we're working with them to try to figure out the rest. One thing I want the board to keep in mind, that what we're asking you to do is approve the budget. Now the budget is just a plan on the cost allocation. When they actually start billing us, they bill us quarterly, they'll bill us on the actual amounts that come in. So if we actually send less wastewater than they anticipate that we'll send to them, then the actual billing amounts will be less than what they're projecting. So before I move on to the CIP, does the board have any questions about the operating budget for EWA?
Gentlemen? I just have one. So if we give them more than we thought we intended to in operations, they would charge us more,
Correct.
estimated. And has that been an issue? Like, did we not anticipate jumping from where we were in 2018 to 2019? Or
Well, when we were preparing the budget, we didn't. When we prepare the budget, we do kind of like what EWA does. We make projections of what we think we'll be doing. And some of those assumptions are how much recycled water demand there will be. And if we're off on the recycled water projections because of the climate that we're seeing, then it'll make a change in the actuals versus the budget. I would like to point out though, if I'll go back one slide. So if you see this number right here, this 2.725 million, that was the 2020 budget for Vallecitos. If you look at where we're actually projecting our 2020 year end, we're projecting that we'll be about 100,000 more than that. So we think we'll actually be at about 2.8 because EWA's actually starting to see what they're projecting is that we're sending more flows to Encina. So maybe a better comparison is to show our projected actual of 2020 will be about 2.8 million compared to our proposed of 3. So it's not quite as big of a change, but we're just trying to show budget to proposed where feasible.
thank you, Glenn. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. So if there's no further questions, I'll go to the.
Martin.
Okay.
Martin, quick question.
All right.
Are we not like San Diego County Water Authority, where we expect that Leucadia, not Leucadia, but we expect Carlsbad and Liebenheim, is there a minimum that they have to take from us? Are we not producing it, or they can't sell it? What's going on?
So they take what they need and they get charged for all of it. And basically what we do is we take all the costs of producing the recycled water at Meadowlark and distribute it between Carlsbad and Liebenhain based on their percentage of the flows that they took. So we get full reimbursement for our costs of operating it, but that's independent of how much they took, really. So if they're taking less overall than we projected, that means more is going to Encina. But we're getting full cost recovery for our Meadowlark recycled water operations.
Right. I guess my question is then, when we enlarged the plant 10, 12 years ago, there was really no need to do that because we're not really selling all that we can produce.
But I don't think that's true. I think there's certainly, when you upsize a plant, you're usually looking at the peak. You're trying to look at what's the maximum demand. And that's not on an annual basis. That's on a daily or maybe even hourly basis. And there are times of the year where we're maxing out that plant. We need to have the capacity that we have at the plant. It doesn't mean it's running at full capacity 24/7 throughout the year. So in those months, for example, if you have a really hot, dry summer, you're producing a lot of recycled water. But in the winter, when the demands are down, the plant isn't running at peak efficiency. It may not be running at all, other than treating local flows. So the plant expansion was needed, and it's utilized a lot in the summer, but not utilized in the shoulder and the low season months.
Thank you. Does that mean our peak is 5 million gallons a day? Is that the correct number?
Yeah, James, if you're on the line, maybe you can address the engineering side of it.
Yeah, absolutely, General Manager Prum. Director Martin, so you are correct. So the plant is rated and has the ability to produce 5 million gallons of peak capacity. So that is absolutely correct. On a good day, based on flows, we'll get a little bit over 4 out of the plant, but we can handle that peak of 5 MGD, that instantaneous peak.
Okay, is there a way, I'm sure we keep records on these things, is there a way, out of curiosity, to know how many times a year we hit that peak? And what's our average per day on a yearly basis?
So,
Yeah,
I don't, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we have the data. We can look back. We can, it would be hard to say how many times do we max out because it may only max out for 30 minutes in a day. So how would you, is that one occurrence or is that 30 minutes out of a year? The data may be difficult to convey, but we certainly have all the data. We can look at it on a daily basis, all the way down to an annual basis and know how much we produced on an average day basis throughout the year. And it's probably less than
Thank you.
half the rated capacity.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I would like to just say ask one more thing, Glenn, or make a comment. So what you're saying is the plant is like our systems, our regular system. We have to have it ready for if everybody flushes their toilet at the same time. That's why, so it has the capacity. Whether we did recycle or not, we needed that capacity. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, no, that's a good analogy. So like, that's why we're trying to match the peaks. Like our water, similar with our water system, we size our pipes to handle instantaneous peaks, not the average flows. Because if you sized it for an average, then you could never accommodate the peaks.
Okay, and then my question regarding the agencies that are taking our recycled water. So they take all that they need, but unlike us with the desal, where we are guaranteeing that we will buy our 35,000 or 3,500 acre feet, they don't have a guarantee amount. They just promise to take all they can. Is that, and that's why sometimes they take more and sometimes take less?
I'll let James address that. He's more familiar with the agreement.
And yeah, President Evans, that's basically true. However, they're responsible for all the costs associated with producing recycled water. So the more they take, it actually drives the cost per acre foot down a little bit. So all the fixed costs stay the same no matter what. So if they take very little water, those fixed costs are divided by a small number. So, but no matter what, Vallecitos is made whole for everything that has to do with producing recycled water. So our ratepayers pay for our primary and secondary, the normal sewer treatment, but to produce recycled water, we are recovered 100% for both our operational and capital costs through basically that's the fixed and the operational cost of making recycled water from those two agencies.
That's a great what's the word, contract, that they pay it all and whether they take a lot or a little. So just a little bit confused by that. Okay, thank you. And you're welcome to go on now unless someone else has another question. No? Okay.
Okay, I'll go to the, so the third program is the capital improvement program for UA. And again, this is just a summary of their capital expenses. They break it into 4 categories. Again, the EWPCF is the Encino Water Pollution Control Facility, the main plant. The capital improvements are the bigger projects that they do. Planned asset rehabilitation or replacement is if they need to like rebuild or overhaul an engine, something like that. Capital acquisitions are for the purchase or procurement of smaller items. And then there's all the costs associated with the remote facilities. So just skip to the bottom line in the fiscal year 21 proposed total capital expense is a little over $24 million. And you'll notice that that's about $1 million less than what they projected last year that we would be spending in fiscal year 21. It's more than they budgeted in 20. So depending how you slice it, they plan to spend more in 20, but less than they thought they were going to spend in 21 about a year ago. So remember that number, $24 million, because I'll refer to it again a little bit later. So I'll just real quickly want to show you the scope of the very aggressive capital program that EWA has planned. This is an aerial view of the plant. The wastewater flows enter in, the north is to the left on this screen. All the flows come into EWA through this facility on the left-hand side. It's called the influent junction structure. So their plans, they plan to spend a lot of money in this primary area where the flows first come in, a little over almost 6.5 million there. They're going to be spending a lot of money on their secondary clarifiers and strainers, spending money improving the digesters on the east side of the property. They'll be working on the biosolids program, basically the heat dryer and the solids thickening. The cogen engines have to be rebuilt. A lot of miscellaneous projects throughout with the flow equalization basins and climate control, the odor reduction facility. They're rebuilding a wall for a building out there called the cogen building that had some damages due to salt air effects on the concrete block, and it's going to cost. This says about $1.5 million, but just today or just yesterday, found out that's going to be close to a $2 million repair. So the point of this is just to show you that they're working on almost every aspect of the plant in the coming fiscal year. So they're going to be very busy. So that's the cost. So that $24 million, again, that's what they plan to spend. And the same question with the operating, where do they intend to get that money? And again, it's from the member agencies. So that number at the bottom, that's what they intend to spend. And it's going to be spread amongst their member agencies depending on the demands that that member agency creates for Encina. So for Vallecitos, I'm sorry, I'll go back. That's an increase of a little over $1 million from fiscal year 2020 projection. The Vallecitos share of the capital program is about $4.66 million, which is about $1 million less than they told us we'd be spending last year in this upcoming year. So that's good. And the reason it's less is they had actually proposed a capital program of almost 30 million, about $29 million. And they got a lot of pushback from the member agencies saying that was too aggressive, it cost too much, and we didn't think we could absorb, the EWA workforce couldn't actually produce that. So they actually reduced the capital proposal by about $4.75 million, which brought some of these dollars down. And I think it's a more manageable program from their perspective. I can't see the number there. So it's about, for us, it's about an 18% decrease over what we thought we were going to be spending this year, this coming year, fiscal year 21. So this is just a view of the EWA 5-year capital program. You're not approving the 5-year plan. This is just a forecast. And again, that number of $24.2 million for fiscal year 21. But then you can see over the next 4 years, they have a very aggressive capital program, $140 million over a 5-year period. So that's a lot of money. And we'll be working these numbers into our budgets. So this is the summary. This is the slide I started with, just to show you basically what EWA is asking the member agencies to approve. This sums everything up. It takes in the pension obligation, the operating budget, and the capital budget. So they're looking for approval to spend $46.5 million combined, which is $2.7 million more than the fiscal year 2020 budget, which is a 6.3% increase. And I know that's a lot of numbers, a lot of information. And the staff recommendation is that our board adopt a resolution approving the EWA fiscal year 21 pension, operating, and capital improvement budgets. Also to direct staff to forward our board's approval to the Encina Wastewater Authority, or to discuss and take any other action that's appropriate. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do any of the directors have any comments or questions?
Martin,
Yes.
just when I sit on the EWA board on the budget finance, and our staff has done a great job with them, both Glenn Pruitt and Wes Owen, and they have a lot of faith in our staff, which is really nice. When our staff talks, they listen. And they really cut it down to where it needs to be. The plant is 50 years old, and now is the time you're going to see a lot of rehab being done. That's just kind of like our district. That's coming to us as well. You get to that age, especially with the corroding pipes, that you have to redo things. So I think it's a very fiscally responsible budget.
Thank you for
With that,
that.
I move to approve.
Great. I'll second the motion. I just wanted to ask Director Hernandez,
Yes.
when Glenn was talking about the building with the wall that's going to maybe run into $2 million, wasn't that something you brought forward to our board about 2 years ago about all the
Yes.
saltwater corrosion, and they're just now getting to it, or it's just been a slow process?
It's been a much larger project than was originally looked at. Originally, the stucco was buckling on the wall, and they brought in a team to open that up, and that opened up to wall deterioration, which opened that up to actual column and beam deterioration, and that put it into a whole new program. We have had to have shoring installed, which needed to be engineered and then installed. I believe in the last meeting I attended, they had the shoring engineering approved and they were starting to install it. But yeah, this has been a big deal. And I went out there personally because I'm familiar with corroded steel, but this was more than corroded. This was eaten mostly through, and so this was necessary.
Wow. Oops, I've lost you. Are you still talking?
No, I'm done.
Oh, all right. I just went on. Well, thank you. Okay, so we have we have a motion and a second to adopt this resolution and the recommendations by staff. Roll call vote, please. And
President Evans,
yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but maybe just to say, none of the public has indicated a desire to speak. So just to let you know, I don't see anybody who wants to speak on this item.
Thank you for that. I forgot. Okay. I'll start with Director Martin.
Yes.
Director Elithar,
Yes.
Director Sinella,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
and I'll say yes as well, so it passes unanimously. That is the end of our action items, so we'll be going to reports. If you're ready, GM Pruitt.
Yeah, I don't have much to share. I'm getting a little hoarse here, speaking a lot today. But I would like to say that things are still working fine here. We're still under modified operations dealing with the COVID issue, but things are going fine. We're going to continue those operations in a modified way, at least until May 15th. But we'll likely extend those through the duration of May, depending on what the governor does and what the San Diego County Public Health Officer does. But I'll keep the board updated when we get new word from those two agencies. So that's all I have.
All right, and Council Gilpin.
Thank you, President Evans. I just would note that the governor did issue 2 new executive orders today. One dealing with workers' compensation benefits. It creates a presumption under certain circumstances for certain employees who contract COVID-19 while working outside their homes. If they satisfy those presumptions, they would be eligible for worker compensation benefits. The second executive order deals with property taxes, and it essentially eliminates the penalties associated with the property taxes if certain conditions are met. I know for Vallecitos and other water districts who receive property tax dollars, those are being entered into the budget considerations relative to revenues, et cetera, how that all plays out. Those 2 new executive orders that were issued today may be of interest. As Glenn indicated, I mean, we're just continuing to watch these things as they change and the rollout at the state level and the local level. The governor took us to a partial stage 2, but has allowed the counties to implement stricter requirements if that is their desire. The Board of Supervisors, I think yesterday, issued their plans relative to the rollout. I think it's going to be slow, but it's certainly creating uncertainties in certain areas, well, in all kinds of areas, in terms of once we move out of this, what's going to happen. I don't have anything further to report.
Thank you, Jim. On the Water Authority, the meeting was on the 24th, I believe, in April, and most of the discussion was how to address all the uncertainty that goes with the budget and how to guesstimate where the revenue is coming from and where, of course, all the different ways in which they're working at this time to save costs and try to keep the rate increase as low as possible. They're looking at long-term, short-term effects. We're having an actual discussion of the budget at the meeting, which is the end of this month on the 28th. So it's probably, surely for you on the Finance Committee, you're very familiar with all the things that we're looking at, and it's really not that different for them. But as Jim has said, it's just a really uncertain time, and it's very difficult for them to even forecast the coming revenue, both because of changes happening in the local supply forecasts as well on who's taking what and when it will be done. And it's very, very detailed. And also they just put out a press release that the Water Authority is giving out 25,000 cloth face masks and for our region. So if you're on the list or want to be on the list, you can call them, and they have a drive-through pickup. I'm not sure if you're familiar or not, Glenn. And these are through FEMA and the EPA and the Water Resource Control Board all went together. There's like 200,000 masks that have gone out for the entire state. So there's 25,000 if we need them. We're welcome to get on the list. So.
Hey Betty, I had a question whenever you're ready.
Yes.
So I was contacted by a couple of other board members on the Water Authority recently, and they were pushing, I don't know if it was a resolution or just an encouragement amongst the board members about the Water Authority not increasing their rates anytime in the near future due to the COVID situation. I guess A, have you heard have you heard about this? And B, if you have, has it gotten any traction, or do you have any updates for us?
Yes, actually, I have heard from that, and I did get the letters. I believe one of the districts is Helix that's pursuing that. It's probably fairly unrealistic that there would be none, because I think at this point, Metropolitan is doing their budget. They have actually at this point made no changes from last year. They're talking about as much as a 9% increase for the San Diego Water Authority, but overall it would be like I think it was 3.5, but because we have different areas. So it's very difficult. They're very much aware, I would say the Water Authority is very much aware though that this is tough times. And I appreciate the districts that have come and asked for that, because we want them to know that's our first choice. But as far as traction, I haven't heard anything on that. I'm just aware that the letter's gone out. Does that help you?
It does. But it also makes me wonder if we want to take a position as a water district. And we don't have to address that right now, but that might be something that we may want to consider or may not want to consider. I don't know, but
that might be a good thing to talk about during the budget committee as some ideas on making our plans. I believe we have a workshop coming up, Glenn, that you'll be telling us about a little bit later.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned it during my report out, but we will be scheduling a board budget workshop on Monday, May 11th at 3 o'clock. And again, it'll be held via Zoom, just like this meeting. And that's certainly a topic that we'll be addressing, because one of our biggest cost drivers in the budget is the cost of purchased water. And President Evans, if I may, it does look like a member of the public has raised a hand at this point in time, so I don't know exactly when they did. Would you like me to call on them, or is it?
Oh, please do. I'm so sorry that we've missed that.
Okay, well,
it's hard. This is hard.
It looks like Emilio Vargas. I don't know how to pronounce the last name, but go ahead and speak.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for taking my question. I have just a general question on board process. If there's a conservation initiative that we'd like to approach your water district, is that a board action or is that sent directly to like an operations manager?
You want me to handle that, President?
Would you please? I'm
Yeah.
curious about the answer.
So I would recommend that you contact me. This is the general manager, Glenn Pruitt. You can either send me an email or call me, and we can explore what it is exactly you're talking about, and I can help you figure out how to process it.
Thank you very much, sir. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Glenn,
no more
okay,
speakers.
that's all for San Diego Water Authority. So Encino Wastewater Authority, Director Martin?
Yeah, you just already heard, Glenn did a great job with the presentation of what we've been working on. So there's no need to expand upon that. We already voted on it. But a great job done by our staff at the Encina. Thank you.
All right. And is there anything for you else to report? Glenn, I guess you stood in for Director Hernandez?
Not since our last meeting. We haven't had any capital improvement committee meetings.
Well, I heard a rumor they were going to be real excited to have Director Hernandez back. So we're glad he's with us.
Yes.
Standing committees.
What I heard was if Glenn can't make any of his NEM meetings, Director Hernandez is standing in from now on as well.
Okay. They're tired of
I want to be board member.
Yep.
So standing committees, I know we had some reports in the our packets, but do you have anything else to announce?
I do from finance.
Yes.
Standing committee finance, we had a meeting this year, and we did talk to staff about, we know that the future is going to be holding some shortfalls and potentially some money's coming in from the downside, people that can't afford to pay and whatnot. We know that's going to happen. But we also know there's opportunities there to be had to cut our expenses somehow. And we're looking forward to hear that report on the 11th, because we asked for it at the meeting, that a report on what expenses we are being able to cut. As you know, we no longer have a front desk operator at all. No longer anyone walks in the lobby, which I think is fantastic. I pushed for that for 2 years to save costs. And we no longer have third graders in school. So we pushed for that. So I just want to see the opportunities of where we've actually saved some money, as well as we know we're going to be costing us money. But that'll be on the 11th. Thank you.
All right. No other standing committees? All right. Thank you, Dan. Directors' reports on meetings, conferences, seminars attended. Probably none, unless the Director Hernandez would like to tell us about his recent seminars while he was off duty. No? That's the end of the reports. Under other business, I just want to remind you that we have a workshop teleconference through Zoom on May 11th, 3 o'clock. And are there any other director comments or future agenda items?
Yes, President Evans.
Yes, Sanal.
Yeah, GM Prum, I know the timing's still a little bit up in the air, but I think, you know, as we see things starting to come back online slowly but surely, sometime over the next, 4 to 8 weeks, we're probably going to be in a different position. And can you bring forward at a future meeting your team's thoughts and plans on how they're going to reintroduce the public back into the facility? What steps you guys might take, some changes that might come out of this. And as well as, I think we would all agree that we're fortunate that we have the technology to be able to still continue to conduct the board's business virtually. It's certainly not ideal for both us and the public. And so my thought is we would want to discontinue it as soon as it's both allowable and safe to do so. if you anticipate any changes to what our future board meetings might look like, or any plans that you have as far as how we will interact in person with the public during those board meetings, and ourselves for that matter, it would be good to have a quick overview for the whole board, please.
Yeah, we can do that. We've already started the conversations at the staff level about what does returning to normal look like? Is there a new normal, or when will we be getting back to the kind of the historic ways we've done things? And we can include like board functions as well.
Thank you.
Good idea. Anyone else? Well, before we adjourn, I would like to say thank you for those who listened in to Mr. Hunsaker. I know was there, and I believe it was Amelia Vargas with a name I didn't catch, and appreciate that. Anyone else? And I really appreciate the board and the staff for handling this really well. It's hard to do this, and I really appreciate it. The reports have been great, and you've all been wonderful. So I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you. Adjourned.
Have a good night.
Good job. Thank you.